And we continue at 2:07 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, sometimes when you're performing stand-up on stage and you can tell you're losing your audience, you've got to go back to your A material, the stuff that people know you for, the stuff they bought the ticket for. Like, you got to go see Jim Gaffigan. You want to see him talk about Hot Pockets. Katie Porter knows when to go back to her A material.
But every time I go in the grocery store, which is sometimes more than once a day, I'm not going to lie, people will stop me and say, I can't believe you're here. How else would I get food?
Wait a minute. Who is she trying to kid? Who does she think she's fooling? What person is going to run into Katie Porter at a grocery store and be surprised to see her there? It's not an adult bookstore. It's Ralph's. And twice a day? Twice a day. I get it if you forgot an item and you're baking a cake or something. But twice a day, that's just gratuitous.
But every time I go in the grocery store, which is sometimes more than once a day, I'm not going to lie, people will stop me and say, I can't believe you're here. How else would I get food?
On the subject of food, I don't know if you've seen this, Randy, but David Brooks is a columnist at the New York Times. And he went on Twitter last night and he posted a picture of a hamburger and French fries. And I'm not sure if it's a salad or he just took all the lettuce and the tomatoes out of the hamburger. And there's a picture also of what looks like whiskey or scotch on the rocks in the picture. And it says, quote, this meal just cost me $78 at Newark Airport. This is why Americans think the economy is terrible. Well, as it turns out, the restaurant in question is a restaurant called the Smokehouse Restaurant in Newark Airport Terminal A. They saw this tweet as the tweet was generating a lot of likes and retweets. And they went public on their social media and said, the burger and fries only cost $17. The rest of his bill was all alcohol. You think he put that on the company card?
It was a business expense.
How many do you think he threw back?
He was talking shop with Johnny Walker and Jose Cuervo.
Well, I'm sure he had a very fun flight. That I can tell you. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. You can read him in all of the Southern California news group papers, including the LA Daily News, the OC Register, the Riverside Press Enterprise, and most importantly, Randy,
the Redlands Daily Facts.
He also has a brand spanking new book that's out. It's called Frank Shadow, and he's going to tell you about a way that you can get your very own copy of Frank Shadow autographed by Mr. Doug McIntyre himself. Mr. Doug McIntyre, welcome.
Good afternoon, boys. Now, in defense of Mr. Brooks of the New York Times, you've flown out of Liberty Airport in Newark, haven't you, John?
I have.
A couple of stiff ones. You need a couple of stiff ones to get through that.
The airport bartenders are always the worst bartenders. You go to your local watering hole. They know who you are. You tip them well. They take care of you. But you never see the same bartender at the airport twice because how often are you in Newark? So they always give you a very weak pour. And I remember one time.
Unless you're a pilot.
That's true. It makes flying for Spirit bearable. But I remember.
Why do they putting the spirits in spirit?
Sitting at one of these airport bars here, and someone came up to me and they go, "What are you drinking?" And I said, "Mostly ice, thanks to my sponsor."
Yeah. Although I tell you, the prices at airports are absolutely insane. Like, have you ever bought a bottle of Smart Water? I keep buying that stuff, hoping it will smart me up enough so I stop buying Smart Water at $7 a pop for a plastic bottle of water, which they're filling, with a hose behind the Delta terminal, So I'm with Mr. But Brooks's comment is actually right. Driving around, in case you haven't noticed, gas is almost $7 a gallon for diesel. So good luck reducing inflation when every single thing that we ever buy is on a truck at some point, and it's almost $7 a gallon for diesel fuel.
Okay, talk to me about this, because employment right now is very low. People are working. If you want a job, you can go out and get a job. You see help wanted signs all over town, and that's for blue-collar jobs. That's for white-collar jobs. Everyone is hiring. However, even though you have a job, your money doesn't go that far. It's amazing how often I'll go out to dinner, and I don't eat that much. Sometimes just, an appetizer or something along those lines and a couple of drinks. Everything is $100. You never get out of a restaurant without forking over $100. It's crazy.
No, it's crazy. Exactly right. I mean, back in the day when I used to go to Vegas, I'd start right around Zizek's Road. I'd start throwing $5 bills out the car window so I'd warm up my shoulder. I didn't want to hurt myself if I just got to the tables cold. So I'd start throwing my money away, so I'd be in Vegas shape by the time I got to the blackjack table. That's what it now. If you walk out the door, it's $20 to pick the paper out of the driveway. Anytime you leave your front door, it costs you a lot of money now, and as a result, this is going to be a political reality because they can point to the job numbers all they want. The bottom line is everything is unbelievably expensive, and the cost of living continues to go up, especially in places like Southern California, where housing is enormous and all of the add-ons that the state of California requires of you. It's just a tremendous amount of pressure, and it also is fueling why we see so many people either on strike or organizing unions to get more leverage with their employers. But that in itself is an inflationary cause as well. As labor costs go up, the costs get passed along to customers, and that contributes to the cost of living too, not just fuel.
Well, so many of these subjects are interconnected. You listen to the insurance companies right now who are pulling out of the California market. And what they complain about most, besides the state's pricing structure and how they're regulated in terms of whether or not they can pass along their cost to the consumer, which in California they're not. But the other big issue for the insurance companies are the cost of materials when someone's house is damaged in a fire or a flood or whatever. The materials that they need to use to rebuild that house are so expensive here, they can't make money. So the inflation issue is impacting the California insurance market.
Well, inflation is the single most brutal tax. I mean, it's not technically a tax, but it's a drain on the economy, and it's crushing. I mean, one of the phrases that I find to be the most preposterous, and we use it all the time, is a fixed income. People living on fixed incomes. Well, if you're a salaried employee, you're on a fixed income. You know exactly how much your boss is going to pay you over the course of 52 weeks. And if the cost of everything keeps going up, you're going backwards. You're going to have less in the piggy bank at the end of the year. And construction costs are profoundly impactful on the cost of housing. A sheet of plywood's $100 for a single sheet. So, that's going to have to be baked into the price if the builder is going to make any money at the end of the year. And we all know the drill. The question is, what do you do about it? Because the prices ever actually go down. They go down with competition, but what we have happening on the other end of this are mega mergers of companies gobbling up other companies so that there's actually less competition in the marketplace as, one gigantic corporation owns 14, 15 different brands all in the same industry, so they basically control the market. And we've seen, look in the airline industry. When one airline raises their prices, all of the other airlines flying the same routes do the same thing. And when they lowered prices, then they drop it a bit. But they engineer new ways to separate the flying public from from their money. You want to sit on the aisle or a window, you want to pick your own seat, we're going to charge you for that. You want a carry-on bag, we're going to charge you for a carry-on bag. And now hotels are starting to do it by charging service fees for early check-in or late checkout. So it's all of this, these service fees that get added on. Hotels putting something called resort fees onto the bill because they have a swimming pool, as if all of a sudden they got cabana service or something. So, look, I don't know what the answer to this is, because people need to make more money, especially in a place like Southern California where it is so expensive to live. They can't all be living out in San Bernardino and beyond and commuting in for a job that pays $35K a year. There's no way anybody could afford to live there and make the kids be losing money going to work. But if they get paid more, then that's one of the factors that makes it more expensive to live in a place. So with my BA in English, it makes my little head hurt. I can't figure out what the answer to that is.
Doug, you mentioned all of the strikes that are going on. One of the strikes that really is impacting our economy is the Writers Guild strike, the after-SAG strike that's going on right now. We see the pickets going on, or the picketing going on in places like Burbank and in front of all of the studios. What I don't understand is this. Recently, Drew Barrymore, who hosts a daytime television talk show, and Bill Maher, who hosts a show on HBO that you've appeared on many times, both announced that they would be coming back and producing new episodes of their show without the writers, that they certainly had many sympathies with the writers, and I think in Bill Maher's case, he said he sided with the writers, but that
he's a member of the WGA. He's a WGA member. He's a member of the union.
But he said that he had other below-the-line people who were not members of those unions who needed to go back to work and needed to feed their families, so he was going to produce new shows, as was Drew Barrymore. People jumped all over them, not just on the picket lines, but on social media, and eventually both of them said they would not be producing any new episodes until the strike was resolved. As all of this is going on, you've got The View over in New York that has Whoopi Goldberg, who is also a member of the Writers Guild, and that show has never missed a beat. Why is it that Drew Barrymore and Bill Maher were the devil, but The View is fine and all of the guests go on the show and people share their content on social media and there's no problem with that? I don't get it.
Well, it's a crowded market with all kinds of things. One of the things that let me back up here. Remember when the Tony Awards were on a couple months back, and they were celebrated for doing the show without the writers, and they made that very much a part of the show, saying that up front that we're doing this without a script, and the opening shot of the Tony Awards was a camera pushing in on a script and hands opening the front page, and it was all blank. And that was their way of showing the audience that we're not going to have a script tonight. But guess what? That was a script. That is the script. There's no such thing as an unscripted. You can't do television without some kind of a script. Even if it's like a silent movie where you're just writing what the pictures are. In every script, there are stage directions that are written by somebody, usually the writer of the dialogue. The writing isn't just the words that people say. It's also frequently descriptions of actions with no words. They call it MOS. Drew Barrymore's problem is that she shut the show down and then was going to start it up. And there were segments on the Drew Barrymore show that were scripted, even if they weren't, even if the dialogue was ad-libbed, somebody had written out what will happen, the beats of those segments. Same thing with Mars' show. With The View, I don't know. It's like talk radio. They've got topics and they gas bag and they yell at each other. They find a conservative, make her cry, and then apologize for it a week later, and they get another conservative. It may be less scripted. It's not like they're going to now do the wacky cooking segment and then they're going to bring out the thing where somebody's in a funny costume for the holiday. But all of those segments on those shows are in effect scripted. Somebody is planning out what the shots are, what's it going to look like. Notes are given so that wardrobe can pull them. But it is, to me, what I find odder is that the after people don't have to go out. Like, for instance, all of the news anchors of the network news shows are AFTRA members. So why are they if SAG-AFTRA is on strike, why is it they're not on strike? If Lester Holt was not able to go in and do the NBC Nightly News and the news writers were not able to write news content, then the message might get out a little quicker. But above and beyond the SAG-AFTRA and the WGA strike here in Southern California, New York, which are where it's mostly impactful, we're seeing labor disturbances. We haven't seen this much labor in the news since really the end of the 1950s, early 1960s, when the labor movement was so dominant in America, where literally 1 out of every 2 worker in America in the 1950s was in organized labor, and including a lot of private labor, whether it was United Auto Workers, the steel workers, wire lathers, electricians, et cetera, obviously the Teamsters. But we're starting to see, as the showbiz gig economy has now become mainstreamed, where lots and lots of businesses are now the gig economy, where these were once middle-class jobs and they don't pay enough, so people have to have 3 and 4 different jobs in order to live in a city like Los Angeles or in Orange County, where it's very expensive, or obviously in New York and the major metropolitan centers. And they're starting to realize that they can't make it. They can't have what their parents had. They can't ever have the American dream. And John, I have said this my entire radio career because it's based on History 101, that if the center fails, if the center both economically and politically collapses, the country collapses. You end up with the pendulum swinging wildly from left to right like some South America banana republic, where you have a leftist junta replaced by a right-wing fascist dictatorship, and then back it goes the other way. And you get whiplashed around like in Venezuela, and it's very, very difficult to establish any kind of an economy or basically stable society when you're being whipped from one ideology to the other. And that's what's happening in America, is the middle class economically is under pressure, and the middle class, the center politically, has been destroyed, completely destroyed. I mean, what's the saying? The only thing you find in the middle of the road is a dead skunk. So we've actually denigrated the center, insulted it. It's become an insult to be in the middle of the road, and yet this whole country was founded on being in the middle of the road. That's what the Constitution was a negotiation between left and right in the 18th century to come up with a House and a Senate and split government so that you wouldn't have domination of one or the other. And we've flipped the script, not just politically, but now economically. And you're starting to see people say, politics can't fix the problem for us, so they're taking it to the streets. And that's what happens when politics fails to address legitimate issues, as the northeastern cities are starting to find out, the sanctuary cities are starting to find out about illegal immigration. You had your chance for decades to take this issue seriously. You didn't do it, and now guess what? You're getting a taste of it, and you don't like it, do you?
What do you make of Newsom's take on the labor strikes? And I say that because he's doing all the national shows. He's in New York talking about climate change this week. And when he was on one of the national shows this week, he was asked about the auto workers. And, oh, yeah, I support the auto workers. I want them to get what they're asking for. That's very important for the American economy. Fine. Let's talk about the writer's strike. Well, I have friends on both sides, and I wish them all the best. I certainly have sympathy with the writers, but I've got friends on both sides, so I'm going to stay out of this one.
Well, look, everybody in politics is either pandering to the base or trying to thread the needle on controversial issues. Everybody's doing this. And Newsom, he's got to side with labor because he's a Democrat in a blue state. And if he wants to run for president, which he desperately does, he's going to need organized labor to be behind him economically. But meanwhile, he's still governor of California, and one of the big, contributors to his campaigns thus far have been the Hollywood studios and some of the big show business moguls. So he doesn't want to alienate them either. So and this is what makes, we rarely get to say this. We rarely get to say something sympathetic towards politicians, but being in politics is difficult because you're constantly confronted with dueling requests. And it gets really difficult when you've got friends who want two different things on the same topic. and you've got to figure out how to, have the wisdom of Solomon and divide the baby. And that's, that Donald Trump is doing it right now. Donald Trump recognizes that the pushback on abortion at the state level in the Supreme Court has been a disaster for the Republicans. And he's trying to figure out how to triangulate on that issue. But what's Ron DeSantis doing? Ron DeSantis and Mike Pence, they're doubling down on the Supreme Court's got it right, and we need to ban abortion. And Trump sees it differently. He sees that this is a problem for me come November of 24. So he's trying to figure out how to divide. Well, I don't want to use divide the baby when we're talking about abortion, but, but he's trying to figure out how to thread the needle on that issue. And usually when you do that, you make a lot of enemies because the true believers on either side aren't going to like the fact that you're taking a middle ground position.
All right, Doug, your book is Frank's Shadow. You have a big book event coming up in Burbank where people can show up and get their copy signed.
Yeah, this Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Barnes & Noble location on San Fernando Road in beautiful downtown Burbank. If you are out and about, I would love to see you in person. Come on, I'll be doing a reading from the book and then be happy to meet with you and sign copies and do all that good stuff. And, of course, if you can't make it this Sunday from 2 to 4, I'd be happy to get you one through my website at DougMcintyre.com, or you can just order a plain old undiluted copy from BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com, and that nice Mr. Bezos will get it to your house pronto, and if you got Prime with free shipping. How about that?
That's Sunday between the hours of 2 and 4 at the Barnes & Noble in Burbank. Doug, thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great event on Sunday.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. See you, boys.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if you have a friend or family member who's a great big fan of Doug McIntyre and they didn't hear Doug's interview on the show, Randy, it's real easy to send a link to the podcast to your friend or family member so they can enjoy the interview too.
That's right. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts. I'll have this hour posted at about 3:01, or you can go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes, including this one that will be called Doug McIntyre. And what's great about a podcast is you can listen to it regularly. You can listen to it at double speed, so it sounds like everyone's on cocaine. You can listen to it at half speed, so it sounds like everyone's drunk. You can listen to it reverse. You can listen to it going forward.
Go forward! Now!
It's 2:41 on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's Throwback Thursday, music from NFL Films edition of the John Phillips Show.
This one says it's from NFL Films, but it sounds very Jane Austen-esque.
I thought it sounded very Disney-esque to me.
That one's Autumn's Race from Music from NFL Films, Volume 3.
Now, Randy, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear the name Katie Porter, the first thing I think of is Xena Warrior Princess.
Well, Katie Porter told her supporters at this fundraiser in Hollywood that she is a Xena policy warrior. Let's find out what the hell that means.
I want to talk briefly about the Senate race. Here's the question that I guarantee you somebody wants to ask and is just like not 100% sure that it's polite. So let me just ask it.
Wait, that was way too much of a laugh for not a joke.
Not even close to being a joke.
That it's polite. So let me just ask it.
All right, how much, John? How much booze has that supporter had? And this is the beginning of the speech.
Oh, she's probably half a box of wine in.
So let me just ask it. You seem swell, but...
You know, when you drink from the box, it's no longer Chablis, it's Chablis.
And it comes out of a bladder.
You seem swell, but so does Adam Schiff, and I like Barbara Lee, and now what do I do about that? They feel like they can't ask us that. That's literally my job, is to answer that question. So you should feel free to raise your hand and ask every single candidate who's coming here asking for your time or money or vote that question.
Please, I hope whoever filmed this, if you do one of these with Schiff, I gotta get a video of him doing stand-up comedy. I beg you.
So let me tell you what I think I uniquely bring to this race. We are shopping for a policy warrior who's going to fight to...
Wait, who calls voting shopping?
Well, when all you can think about is the grocery store, that's the word that comes to mind.
If we're shopping for a senator, what's the return policy when it doesn't work out?
Yeah, because we certainly bought a bunch of defective ones.
We are shopping for a policy warrior who's going to fight to do the things that we simply, decade after decade after decade, fail to do. Invest in childcare. Every decade we talk about this, and every decade it just never quite gets to the top of the priority list.
And even if you do make it to the Senate, you won't do anything about it.
Bring down the cost of housing. The last time the federal government made a big investment in private market housing was the GI Bill. And think about how transformative that was for an entire generation, and how much of a pickle we find ourselves in now, having ignored it. So I'm going to be that policy warrior, but the thing I think that makes me stand out even more is the political leader that we need to be shopping for. I have knocked hundreds of doors in Huntington Beach, and I am still having fun in politics.
What does that mean?
That's our A material.
That is important. We are a big blue state when you look at a state, but when you zoom in at all, everywhere you look, you see school boards, water districts, county supervisors, assembly races, and the congressional seats that we have to win back the House are here in California.
And you're advocating one of those.
That's okay, because DUI Dave, who is her endorsed candidate, who she wants to be in that seat, is probably going to lose it for the Democrats.
I know how to win tough races. I know what it takes, I know how to message, and I know how to do it without ever waffling,
Boy, she has figured out a whole lot of food terms to throw into this speech.
Yeah, let's see her work in pancake to the next one.
She is in a pickle, and she wants to make sure she doesn't waffle.
Ever waffling, without ever wobbling on my progressive values. We need that political leadership. We have people who are retiring who have been with us for generations. We have people who will retire, perhaps, who have been with us for generations.
What about the 80-year-old running for the presidency?
Oh, he's the best.
This is our moment to think about who's going to help us be the standard bearer for our party. Who knows how to pull in those independent voters, those no-party preference voters? Who knows how to pull in younger voters? The Democratic definition today of a younger voter is a voter not on Medicare.
Okay, that one's not bad.
And probably true.
That's not a bad joke. She gets one.
The Democratic definition today of a younger voter is a voter not on Medicare. And you laugh, and yet that's true. When we say Joe Biden has a...
Wait, she wasn't playing that line for laughs?
No, what she said is factually accurate.
When we say Joe Biden has a problem, President Biden, I'm a big fan of, and I hope you'll ask me what I'm a fan of later. But when we say he has a problem with younger voters, I need you to understand, we mean voters under 65. We don't mean 19-year-olds, okay? So how are we going to get there? My colleague Adam Schiff's main message has the great virtue of being 100% true. Donald Trump sucks.
And that's his claim to fame.
I mean, I'm being gentle there, is how I'm phrasing that. Adam is absolutely right about that, and he deserves credit for saying it and saying it in the ways and the forums that he did. But that message is not going to help us win votes today. If you haven't figured out by this election that Donald Trump sucks, we are not going to persuade you this time. Our path to victory is to grow the pie, to grow...
Oh, there it is again.
So we got waffles, we got pickles, and now we have pie. What kind of pie is it, Katie? Is it peach? Is it chocolate? Apple? Pecan, perhaps?
I think we got to take a break because all of a sudden I'm starving.